praise the Lord and pass the paper towels. It's raining. Well, it's trying to. Can you hear the thunder? It rained enough to get the windowsill wet, so I had to close the windows and dry things off, and we are hoping for more. So let's just see what happens while we do this video. Hey, today's video is brought to you by our patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help support Ron Spomer Outdoors and become part of the Ron Spomer Outdoors community, check out patreon.com and go to Ron Spomer Outdoors and you can join us. We sure appreciate the support. Now today I want to answer a question from a viewer who said, "Hey Ron, what is the flattest shooting cartridge of all time?" Now that is a good question. I thought I knew, but I had to do quite a bit of research just to make sure, and I was, I think, pretty close. But it's hard to say what is the exact flattest shooting cartridge until you define distance, because it changes. Some of them shoot flatter out to mid-range, some of them shoot flatter at extreme range, and I think I know why. The difference is in a combination of ballistics coefficient, which a lot of people like to hate, but it's really important, and the other is, of course, muzzle velocity. So, this gentleman, Kelly, asked if it was the 270 or the 7 Rem mag he guessed, or maybe he thought the 300 Winchester Magnum. Well, close but no cigar on any of them. Now, I did some charts here. We're going to be looking at those, and we're going to flash them up for you, but I don't want to give it away, so we're going to cover up the actual drop out there at distances. While we just examine the cartridges, we're going to find that are pretty close, and some of them not so close. And one of the not so closest is a good old 6.5 Creedmoor. Everyone thinks that this is the ultimate long-range cartridge, and it was designed for long range to even extreme range shooting, 1,000 yards, a little bit farther than that perhaps. It's darn good for that, but it's not all that flat shooting. You know, it has high BC bullets, and that really helps because it's usually the wind deflection that costs you on long range target shooting. So we're going to look at the 6.5 Creedmoor, the 270 Winchester as he suggested, and the 7 Rem mag, but then the 220 Swift, because that was my immediate guess, knowing that it was the fastest commercial cartridge out there. I thought that just might do the trick. But then I did some research into the big ones. 338, 378 Weatherby. That is a huge case. Right here is the powder supply on that baby. But this one is actually necked down to 30 caliber. So this is the 30. I did not have the 338 version, but that 378 Weatherby is a big case. That's got good opportunity because with those heavier bullets, you get additional ballistics coefficient numbers. They go up. It's not just the sleek shape of the bullet, it's also the weight. So there's advantage with the larger calibers with big bullets, and we're going to see that. We're going to try a 300 grain bullet on that guy. And then you've got to go to the extreme. This isn't what anybody would call a hunting cartridge, but that 50 BMG is shot a lot for long-range targets and such, and it sets some world records. So we're going to take a look at that. All right. So sliding down on our bullet and BC, 6.5 Creedmoor has a 143 grain bullet with .625 BC, going 2,750 feet per second. Pretty standard for that, in factory ammunition at least. The 270 Winchester, I'm pushing a little bit here, 26-inch barrel, 150 grain bullet, .590 on the BC, 2,900 feet per second. That's smoking, but I found it in the reloading manual, so we're going to go with that to give the 270 a little bit of an advantage here. 7 Rem mag, 175 grain bullet. Now we're getting our BC up there, .645 or 648. 2,900 feet per second. So we're going to find out how that competes with that 270. Those guys are going to be pretty close. 220 Swift. Now this is the oddball here. 40 grain bullet, and this is going to prove a point. 40 grain bullet with just a .220 BC. That is really low. But because it's so light and has such a big powder reservoir behind it, we're driving at 4,200 feet per second from a 26-inch barrel. That's screaming, guys. Then the 338, 378 Weatherby, 300 grain bullet, .826 BC. That is getting up toward the top of the heap for ballistics coefficients. And we're driving it pretty fast at 2,800 feet per second. It has to compete against that 50 BMG, which is pushing a 750 grain bullet. That is rated 1.050 by Hornady, who make it. So that one is 2,700 feet per second. So it's interesting to see how those two fare. So now let's open up the numbers on the drop at 600 yards. Now, before I do that, I want to tell you how I zeroed these. Typically, you've got a rifle barrel pointing slightly up from your sight. So if you're looking dead on the target, you've got to slope that rifle up a little bit so that the bullet arcs into it. Otherwise, you would never hit anything you aimed at. Because with a dead level rifle, as soon as you launch a bullet, it begins to fall. Gravity pulls it immediately as soon as it leaves that muzzle. And as the air drag slows it down, it gets pulled down farther and farther and faster and faster until it hits the ground. So we always angle up slightly. It's a very minimal angle, but it makes a huge difference. But for this test, just for pure drop, I wanted to go dead level and shoot it and have gravity start pulling them right away. So they're all even that way. Oh, here's Covey. You always know when I'm doing a video down here, don't you? You come in here and you put your head on my lap. Oh my goodness. Don't you know you're not supposed to interrupt? Well, come around here where people can see you then. They'll think I'm scratching my leg or something. Come on, nose. Come on. Hi, girl. Say hi to everybody. Gosh, do it. Okay. You just sit there and be good. So where was I? I forgot. At any rate, we've got these guys shooting dead flat. So we're going to see pure drop. No elevation advantage from canting that rifle barrel up, as you would do if you were really hunting. All right. So the 6.5 Creedmoor at 600 yards is dropping 104 inches. The 270, only 95 inches. 7 rem mag, 93 inches. Look at that 220 Swift, 70 inches of drop. That's all. With that little 40 grain bullet, that is flat shooting. 338, 378 Weatherby, 95 inches, right there with the 270. And the big 50 BMG that I thought might win this, 98 inches of drop. But that's at 600 yards. Let's go out to 1,000 and see how this changes. 350 inches of drop out of that Creedmoor. Only 319 with the 270. 305 with the 7 rem mag. And that's probably why Kelly thought the 7 rem mag might be a winner. But the 220 Swift suddenly is falling behind. 373 inches of drop. Whoa, what's happened? That's that low BC and that 40 grain bullet. You know, it's a screamer at 4,200 feet per second. And that's why it shoots so flat until the low BC means it's been using its energy up to push air out of the way. The air drag has slowed it down. So now it's slowing down. It's staying in flight longer. Gravity pulls it to the ground. It doesn't have the advantage at 1,000 yards. But look at the 338, 378, 299 compared to 301 on the 50 BMG. There's our winner right there. That big guy is shooting the flattest to 1,000 yards. What I didn't do was take it past 1,000 because I bet you anything at 1,500, BMG's the winner, and from there on out, it's probably going to keep going. I probably should have done those numbers, but, you know, I can go on and on with this stuff, and I don't want to bore everybody to tears with numbers. But the concept is valid. At long ranges, you've got a great advantage with those high BC bullets, but you've got to have enough powder to drive them fast. There's this balance between muzzle velocity and BC that we're always playing with our cartridges. So as a hunting cartridge, can we really consider the 220 Swift to be one? I think we can. Now, if you know much about that, it's an infamous cartridge in a way, because it's always been known as a barrel burner, and it's been used a lot by varmint shooters who do a lot of fast shooting. If you're out in a prairie dog town and you're trying to clean it up for some rancher, you can easily shoot 4, 5, 6 shots in a minute, or even a half a minute. And well, that heat coming out with that much powder, pushing that light bullet down that tiny bore, that's what eats the throat and breaks it up, and there goes your barrel. But if you're just using it for big game hunting, where you might take 1 or 2 or 3 shots at an animal and be done, that thing can last a pretty long time. But is it capable of taking big game animals? That's the big argument. It got a bad reputation in the 1950s when a guy named Robert Rourke, went to Africa on his first safari, took a 220 Swift for some reason, shot at a couple of animals. I think one was a warthog and one was a hyena. And the bullets exploded on the outside of the animal because they were varmint bullets. But he never wrote a thing about varmint bullets. He never said anything about the quality of the bullet. He just declared that the 220 Swift was worthless. And his PH, I think, was Selby, and he said the same thing. He said, hey, use a real gun. Get your 30-06 and then your 458 or whatever else he was using, the bigger stuff. And what came out of that was a beautiful book, Use Enough Gun. That was his mantra. And a lot of people saw that and the 220 Swift and agreed and just said, yeah, that's a joke. Why would you use a little 22 caliber to try to take a big animal? But there's a flip side to this. And you can read about it in Volume 1 of P.O. Ackley's book. It's his Shooters and Reloaders Handbook. And it's got some fascinating information in there from hunters who were working for the government culling burros and feral horses from Grand Canyon National Park. And the government was a little more sensible back in those days. They took an invasive species and they tried to take it out of the national park because obviously an invasive species that doesn't belong here, gobbling up all the habitat in a national park, not so smart. So these guys were hired to take them out. And what they found and wrote about in here, several of them, was how effective the 220 Swift was. They compared it with a lot of other cartridges and bullets, 30-06s, and I don't know what else they all used, but the amazing thing, what really opened my eyes up, was that they found the 220 Swift to be the sharpest, quickest, cleanest killer of all on these 600-700 animals, 700-pound animals. I mean, burros and horses, they're big, tough animals. And these guys were taking them lights out. And not just with central nervous system hits, but they were doing some behind-the-shoulder stuff. And they talked about several different bullets. You know, the frangible ones, not so much, but they had some custom bullets that were a little tougher back in that day. And this was probably the 1940s, 1930s. So it's an eye-opener. If you want to read about it, I'd recommend you try to get a hold of one of these. If we can find a place to get one, we'll put it up. I think they're probably going to be used copies, and they might be pretty pricey, but we'll put a link in here if we can find a place to buy these. Amazon might have some. And it's a great book. I highly recommend it because these guys talk a lot about killing power, what bullets do, and all that important information. And that's from way back in the mid-20th century. So these guys knew their stuff, especially P.O. Ackley. He was a heck of a gunsmith. This is the guy that made all the Ackley improved cartridges, by the way, with the sharper shoulders. Oh, more thunder out there. Come on, rain. Well, I better sign off here now. Pretty interesting numbers, though. So how are you going to select your flat shooting cartridge for hunting? Obviously, I'm not recommending that 600 and 1,000 yards are what you should use for your hunting. I try to keep my shots relatively close because the longer you stretch those shots, the better your chance for not making them. The wind deflection, the animal moves, all the usual things. Stick to targets. I really advocate long-range training because it just makes you a better rifleman all the way around. But for hunting, I try to stay inside of 400 yards, 300 yards if I can. But if you're looking for a flat cartridge over those distances, you know what to look for. If you don't think the 220 Swift is going to hack it for you because it's too small or illegal where you hunt, 7-rem mag is next in line. But remember, these days the 7-rem mag isn't the fastest 7 out there. It's that speed and remember the BC of the bullet. So there's a lot of 300s that have high BC bullets and can match the speed of that 7-rem mag, but there's also faster 7s. The 7 Remington Ultra Mag, the 28 Nosler, just so many of them appearing these days. So if you definitely want to shoot the flattest, just go for the fastest and highest BC bullet you can push, and you're going to have your flattest shooting cartridge. This is Ron Spomer. Thanks for tuning in. I invite you to subscribe to our channel, and I thank our Patreons for the help. Hunt honest and shoot straight.